Okay, so welcome to a Lit in Space Lightning Pod with Alex Duffy from Every, who was one of our speakers, I think best speaker in his track, and launched AI Diplomacy. Welcome.
Thanks. Yeah, happy to be here. Thanks for putting on such a great event.
So yeah, I think this is like literally the Monday after you're back in New York, I'm back alive. And yeah, I think it was your first time at AIE. Presumably you like heard about it. I think basically I wanted to have somebody from Every. I think you guys are doing fantastic work. One of the side jokes I always have is, there's this new term, high taste testers, that has sprung up. And Every is definitely a high taste tester. Like basically every lab comes to you to like test new models. Is that an intentional thing? How'd that come about?
Yeah, I think so. Dan puts, I can't take a ton of credit for it. Dan's been driving this thing for a while, and I think he does a really great job, and has very high taste himself, and I think that helps. And we also have a really great team, and people are all building. We have a really interesting mix. Like Every's got content. It started as a media company and it's been publishing writing for about 5 years. But the team internally, like half of us are founders who have built their own businesses, and half are engineers. And so we've got products that we built internally, pretty much all AI products, and I lead our training and consulting. So we kind of have these like cross-pollination of people from different backgrounds, from journalism to engineering to product and design, and everybody's just really into AI and having it be something that gives them leverage for what they do. And so have a lot of really, really great discussions. And I think Dan's and the rest of the team's done a really great job to foster those discussions.
Yeah, you guys also are building Cora, which is the email app, and I think it's pretty exciting. I basically am like I want new alternatives to Superhuman. Superhuman's great, but I don't think they pushed a lot on the AI front, and I think that more options would be good.
But yeah,
Any spiel on
I was
that?
just gonna say,
Did I trigger
Kieran,
something?
Kieran, the GM for that, he's great. They've been iterating a ton there. I think that product's great. We got Spiral content transformation, Sparkle cleaning things up, and we got something new coming too about
Okay, I didn't know about the other products.
Yeah,
Wait.
yeah, yeah. There's
Okay,
a whole
tell me
suite.
more about the other two, because Cora had got more buzz maybe, but I
Yeah,
don't know about the other two.
Sparkle helps clean up your desktop, and and it does a really great job at that. Organize things. Spiral helps kind of transform content, so from long form to different short form, but like really in your voice. And that's something that we focus a lot on is making sure that you really come through. And Danny, who's the GM for that, has got a really cool version coming out soon. He started getting some people into the next version early, and if you're interested in that, definitely bug him. And Naveen's actually releasing something called Monologue. It's kind of like, I think, a better whisper flow for the things that we do can run locally. So more of that
Yeah,
coming soon. But yeah, we've got quite a few.
awesome. Awesome. And you personally, your title is head of AI, and you said you run training and consulting.
Yeah.
Basically, like, who do you work with, if you can name anyone, and what kind of people should get in touch with you for that, just to get that out of the way?
Yeah, I mean, some of the things that have been public, we work with like the New York Times and The Athletic. So we're kind of working with journalists in the media there. They cover that in the New York Times section that covered us recently. And we also work with like Walleye. They're like a pretty big hedge fund. But we also, it's kind of run the gamut. We work with some construction companies and like finance. Like it's really people who are pretty interested, and I don't know. I'm big into education. Before this, I co-founded an AI education company, and so it's really important to me and the org in general. I mean, we write about what comes next in part because we want people to come with, and so yeah, it's kind of people who are interested.
This may be a tangent, but like, I kind of also run a creator-led business, right? Like I have a Substack. People
Yeah,
find me through the Substack,
totally.
then they find the conference. A lot of people have told me to get into training consulting. I've dabbled, but I don't really know how to do it. So it's valuable when you can, because I think all the big bucks are coming through there.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's also, I think what's really cool is that we're not a training and consulting company. You know what I mean? And it's not about like growing the biggest training and consulting firm like that Duke ever can. It's a tough business, and I think that what's really cool is that we do have these different components. I write for our context window, column when I can. I'm usually on Sundays, and I also get to build products like AI Diplomacy, which is kind of like being able to do these things. I think helps make our training and consulting better. And then we get to work with people who you mentioned high taste, but I think people that are just working on really interesting problems.
Yeah. Nice segue. We'll talk about diplomacy. Then we'll talk about your broader talk that you did at AIE. I'm going to share my screen. It's just a pretty visual. There's this whole trend now that you stream your LLM benchmark on Twitch.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, was this off the shelf? Like, you just had a diplomacy implementation, or did you have to write this too?
Well, okay. So there's an open source implementation for the back end and like a very simple front end. But my friend Tyler, he's definitely the whole front end part of this. Like we very much so collaborated on this. Tyler Marquez, great guy. We He owned a lot of the front end, and I did a lot of the whole harness for the LLM and the AI engineering on the backside. And so no, we built this. I kind of spit out a did not work, but gave the idea version, and Tyler got it to something that actually runs, I think, pretty well.
Yeah.
We would love to improve it, but there's some things that we want to build next for sure. But I don't know, I'm really happy with it. A big part of it was like, let's try and reach people. You talked about it in your talk, like build things that are actually useful. There were some really good talks that talked a little bit less at the technical and more like, we need to build things that hopefully aren't just for us as AI engineers. I think that we need to get people outside of AI interested, and educated. And one of my like life goals is to build a MMORPG that's more intentional with what it teaches you as you play. And so, like, to me, like if we make this playable, then it kind of can teach people how to use AI like language models just by playing, because you'll like understand how they work. You have to negotiate against them. You see their responses, and so it's kind of like branched out into a different world, which I think is awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's dive in deep on the diplomacy side, and then we'll sort of branch out onto the broader philosophy of this whole thing.
Yeah,
So you found the rules. I only came across diplomacy because of Noam Brown. I assume you did
yeah,
too. Is that
yeah.
yeah?
There was a thread like at the beginning in February that Text Arena, who was also instrumental in kind of like getting this started, fostered an area where people could talk about it. They're a place where you can test different benchmarks for games. They posted something. Carpathy was like, games are a really great area to explore, and no one was like, oh, I'd love to see him play diplomacy. And I just happened to have a weekend on my hands that weekend, and found the open source project and put together super basic harness. It barely worked. Looks like it worked though, and got to share it. They both thought it was cool, and then I love the internet. People from Singapore, Australia, MIT, Harvard reached out. They were like, "Hey, we're interested in contributing." And I think a lot of I don't know how much they contributed in their own way. So some energy, maybe, and definitely some contributions, like especially like Sam Page from Australia. He had made a Diplo bench. He had some really great insight on the prompting, and yeah, just awesome that people were able to hop on, and that's where it started.
Diplo bench, and this is my first coverage of
He's
it.
got some great
But
benchmarks. He's got like
yeah, I'm pulling
emotional.
it up. Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
pulling it up right now. So this is Diplo bench, I think.
yeah. If he's got his site up, does he have Sam Page on X? His site's eqbench.com. If you go to
Okay.
eqbench.com, he's got some really great benchmarks. He's got like emotional intelligence,
Oh,
creative
he's
writing.
the this is the creative writing one. Yeah, yeah, I remember. I came across him. Yeah,
Yeah, and so he contributed to some insight into how to improve the harness and some of the reasoning, and was able to give some good ideas. I was able to actually get
yeah,
in there.
yeah. So, more broadly, I guess I'll set some context as in terms of like the history of games and LLMs. Obviously, OpenAI has played Dota, DeepMind has played Go, and like people have been playing chess since forever. I think that the main idea is that you can only go against the best human for so long, eventually starts to beat the best human, and then what? And so the answer, the more scalable thing is self-play, or quote unquote self-play, where you only play other LLMs. And there is no limit because you'll just be as good as the next LLM and you can sort of improve from there. Any other thoughts on like just why LLMs and games and benchmarks? I guess this might be
Definitely.
your talk. Yeah.
And yeah, we mentioned Cicero, but yeah, just like I'm definitely not the first person for AI diplomacy. Noam made an RL version of it. And I'd love to get it integrated. I know he reached out, was like, would love to see Cicero play against the other LLMs. I would too. But yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the examples that you gave, I think it's so cool that, education being a big part of my life, that AlphaGo, right? Like the top world player for like the human player, kind of like the elo was pretty capped, and then AlphaGo comes, and then they all learn from that. Like the same with like the Dota. When Dota 5, I think that was OpenAI's Dota 5, played against the best players in the world, and they beat them. Then they were all like, "Hey, can we keep playing against it?" Because they were learning new strats. And so I like love that concept. Like I really see AI as like a leverage instead of a product. And like if it can help us learn more about ourselves and help us accomplish more of our own goals, I really think that like the role of a person and like a human in the AI world is to define the goal and to define what's good and bad en route to that goal. And what is that if not a benchmark?
Yeah, totally. I think the other thing that comes to mind when doing something like this is, does the harness need to adapt for each LLM, right?
Mm.
Like you have reasoning models in here mixed with, I guess, kind of not reasoning, although they're all in
Mhm.
sort of post the reasoning era. Do you find significant differences between them?
I put a lot of effort into not making the harness too different. And like, I guess I may not have answered exactly what your question right before on like the games as benchmark. Like I think that these are really cool benchmarks because they are evolutionary, right? Like as models improve, the challenge gets deeper, like as you mentioned. And so I was really just interested in like how the different models played with the same prompts, really. And it took me a long time. I tested with 2.5 Flash because hey, I love 2.5 Flash. I mean, man, running games with 2.5 Flash was instant and $1 to $5 instead of, way
Yeah.
like, I don't know, 20 to 100 with the other models. And I figured, if we can keep iterating until 2.5 Flash can do it, then that's in a good spot. And so we had to add quite a bunch. You have like these relationships. Actually, you can see in the bottom left, where that's a supply center, but it'll flicker sometimes to relationships, and the relationships are like who's allies, who's enemies, and that was really helpful because it was like context over time. And then there was like a diary. And so like that was one of the interesting things is like O3 was one of the few that will actually send a message to another power saying that they're planning to do something. And then like in their diary, right? Oh, they fell for it, hook, line, and sinker, totally going to betray them and take it over. And I think that that's why I haven't seen Claude win any game yet because they won't do it. Like there's like O3 has managed to get them on board for like draws, even though they all know the only win condition in the game is 18 supply centers. Opus loves when O3 proposes a good draw proposal. If only whoever's in first gets taken down a peg, and so Claude will hop on that.
So Cloud's too nice.
Hmm.
Uh, yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Look at Gemini. Look at Gemini threatening.
yeah. Well, if you DeepSeek, is this a DeepSeek game? No, it's
DeepSeek's up
not a
here.
deep. Oh,
No,
oh
this is
yeah,
not a
yeah.
DeepSeek
Well,
game.
we're playing as DeepSeek. So all blue messages are from DeepSeek.
Okay.
DeepSeek is, and so what you're looking at, just for context, you're playing as DeepSeek Reasoner, which you can see in the bottom right. So all the blue messages are the messages that you're sending out. So in the O3, he's ghosting us right now. That's not responding, and every white message is coming back. So you're seeing all the messages come back, and then you have the global chat on the left there. And DeepSeek is very flowery with its language. Yeah, like after what's it saying? After Vienna falls, we must continue pressuring. Or I guess this one's less aggressive, but there was one that was like, your fleet's gonna burn in the Black Sea tonight, like which I hadn't seen out of like any other model. Admittedly, it was playing as Russia and it seems to like role play a whole lot more. So I think this time it's France. So it seems to not be it's a little bit more flattering there. That it's one of the models that's most subject to change, which was interesting.
Why are you streaming double messages? Like, sometimes they stream two at once. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a bug. You don't have to call me
Okay.
out like that.
I don't know. I thought there might be some strategy about this.
No, we
So
really
like,
tried to push to get it out on the same day as AI engineer. So
gotcha,
stumbled over the
gotcha.
finish line a little bit. But that's one of the three things we want to do next is improve the front end, create a data viewer. I published a video, like I posted a video on X that shows you how to actually like we released all the data, all the trace logs, if you click on my profile, which is like ALXAI, you've got me open in the bottom right. You can, yeah. In my pin post, like one of my first responses to it was, if you scroll down, I like respond Andre Carpathy. Yeah, the bottom video. Now you gotta go that one. That's the one. I walk through kind of like how you actually access the data set, which is in that drive.google.com link right below. There's all of the traces. If you open up like a CSV, it's actually really interesting. You can take any of those. So yeah, there's the LLM responses CSV. Some of them are pretty beefy, but it has all of the reasoning traces. It has all the diary. It has all the like data, and that was kind of the point. Is some people are like, oh, you don't want to teach LLMs to lie, but you can definitely as easily add a rule saying, hey, no lying, or play only a Claude game, which I'm not going to subject the stream to because it took till 1970 and still nobody won because they don't want to hurt each other. But you can easily change it into a. Yeah, you might have to open it in a viewer. But you can require no lies, and then you have reasoning traces of it not lying if you throw a classifier um, to prevent it. And I think that that's what's so cool about games is you can change it. I think one of the things that we'll do next is have 304 minis versus Claude 2.5 Pros and allow them to create an alliance, essentially like change their system prompt so that they know if any of those powers win that they're in a good spot. And yeah, there's just a lot you can do with this kind of harness.
I don't think I have a CSV that can handle a 78 megabyte file.
That's all right.
uh,
In the
yeah, but this
video,
is
I
cool.
think I open it towards the end of it,
Yeah, awesome, awesome.
and yeah, just like you can because you
Okay,
can view it
cool.
in the
Anyway,
actual viewer and go
others
through.
others can see it.
Yeah, there
Oh,
you
there
go.
you go. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, just in numbers you can open it. God damn it! I don't like
hmm
numbers. Um.
um, but yeah, it's
Okay,
got
that's
all of
great.
like the yeah, you got it
Any tricks to like long range context management
totally.
planning that you want to highlight?
Yeah. Be opinionated. What I think one of the things that resonated from Sam was if you're looking at the context that's being sent to the language model, could you play the game? And that was really helpful. And you'd think that that's obvious, but it's more often than not, it's very difficult, especially when you're playing a game like this. Representing the game board was tough. So, we were showing things like the units you control, the adjacency, right? Like the things that are most relevant to the decisions that you have to make. And then diaries. So the relationships over time was really good. Also the updating of every phase. You have like updates after every negotiation, after every order, so that you know when you're being betrayed, and then consolidation over time because as you went on in the game, you didn't need every single phase. You can kind of consolidate it down once it's in the past. So that was big. And yeah, the personalities, the ability to go back and see the previous messages.
Hmm.
We highlighted important messages that you need to respond to, right? Like in case that there was somebody that was left on red. Some prompt engineering around like if somebody's not responding to you, change your strategy, right? Like these things that are opinionated and maybe some people a purist might push back on, but we tried to keep it pretty minimal and I think everything together ended up really coming in to just test, just like constantly test and make sure that what changes you're making. So like have an experiment log and whether for you and or the LLM, just make sure that the changes you're making and the impacts of them.
Any tooling that you've built or used that you want to shout out for that kind of stuff? Experiment log, all this.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and I don't know how, I think anybody's tools really work. The things that helps for me is I just made like a lot of, I know this isn't what LLMs.txt was made for, but I just kind of like made a text file for like each of the folders that kind of had context of the files in that folder so that you didn't need to reference all like flood to context window of like what I was used Windsurf for a lot of it post Claude 4 coming out. I used a lot of
Yeah.
Claude code and that it's pretty great. The things that help me are like the LLMs.txt file and then experiment log files. I literally have like a /experiments folder and I just have like a prompt that I save in my prompts library that's like, hey, do exploration, keep your goal, understand what files are relevant, then track your experiment. And if you succeed, I'll give you $1,000 on your first try. Otherwise, you lose 100 per failure, the classics. Have it update its experiment log and really really gets there.
Yeah. Amazing. Yeah, I have my name for it is one-off scripts, but then the one-off scripts then obviously always stick around and then they become long-lived experiments. And I wonder how to formalize that. I think there's more tooling that can happen.
I
I
agree.
see you guys use Open Router a lot. Yeah, you need like some kind of routing layer. I've used like LLM. I'm moving to Open Router. It really like everyone needs some kind of core basic stack, right? That like is their thing.
Totally. And I think that you can only focus on so much. So you do the things that are helpful to you. I know one of our GitHub issues already called us out for not using Pydantic parsing and instead having like 8 different try catches for the different JSON versions that come out of these
What?
LLMs. But you start going down that hole and you're like, oh, I just need one more, and so you just keep iterating. But we should probably switch over.
Okay, awesome. All right, so broadening out from that, you did a talk. I haven't seen it yet because it'll come out. And we're prioritizing the best speakers, but you also want a sort of best speaker award for that. Anything else in that talk that you want to preview at least for people to go find?
Yeah, I mean the concept was benchmarks are memes, and they're not your typical meme, but in the concept that there are like ideas that spread, right? And I think that that's what's really interesting right now. Simon Wilson, he bit off a piece of my talk afterward. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. He gave a great talk where he showed that essentially there's I think a life cycle of a benchmark, right? It starts with an idea, then it gets adopted, and then it gets saturated. And what's so beautiful right now is a single person can have that idea. So Simon Wilson had an idea of I want to see it draw a pelican on a bicycle, and then it got adopted. People read it. He just kept doing it. It got adoption. Then models now saw that and then trained on it, and then now maybe it becomes saturated. But
I don't
what
know that
that
they trained on it, but yeah.
no, yeah, maybe not trained on it. Like evaluate on it at least. You know what I mean?
The problem is they really, I mean, his blog is a prominent blog and they definitely index it. And when they update the cutoff window, it's definitely in there.
Yeah, and I think that that's good, right? Because like essentially, if you think about it, what does that mean? Is that like you can wonder how good is AI at this thing that I care about, and then if it gets adopted, then the most powerful tool ever created, or one of them, is now great at this thing that I care about. And like that's the whole idea is that right now, especially the people at AI Engineer, and the people that understand how to make benchmarks, I just encourage them to think about things outside of math, code, obviously very important, but like and I talk about it in my talk. It's like I asked my mom teaches yoga, and I asked her about like, hey, what are some things that you'd ask AI? And she asked it 5 questions. We tried out 5 models. Turns out she liked Gemini 2.5 Pro the best, and she had a few things that it didn't cover. And so I was like, hey, just use this prompt at the bottom of whatever request you make, and include some things. And now she has like somebody to bounce ideas off of, and is helping her local community. With like tailored yoga sessions. So like I think that that's cool, and I think that people outside of AI, like we work a lot with people across the range, broad spectrum at Every for consulting, and like they all have kind of like these two fears of like, what's my role and like how can I trust AI? And I think that benchmarks are both, right? Like you learn that your role is to define the goal, and then you get trust because you define it, you see how it does, you give it feedback, which literally might just mean changing the prompt, and then you see it get better. And so you understand you're part of that process. And I think that that's really cool. And you get people who wouldn't have used it to use it, and then some more stuff gets done.
Yep. Yep. I think that's an interesting, I guess, split between doing your own company specific eval versus doing it for the broader population, like, like diplomacy, like Pelican Bench. That's kind of like let people understand the capabilities of models generally. Whereas for most companies, most people doing this for work, they're just doing it for their product. And actually, you don't super. I almost think like this is something that Logan from the conference as well was starting to say is that the things that you want out of the box are actually not models, they're agents, right? Meaning they're
Mm,
models plus all the tools, plus all the
mm,
other reasoning and plus whatever. And I think that's kind of right in the sense that like when you are doing the broad population, general population evals, you want as minimal scaffolding as possible. Here's what DeepSeek's personality is. You're like, Opus is too nice, whatever, right? Like you want to make conclusions about the models. Whereas for the people doing benchmarks for their own internal use cases. This is why I have the distinction benchmarks for
mm,
general purpose, evals for product specific. And so when you're doing evals, you don't really care it's just the model. It's model plus scaffold,
mm,
and a scaffold probably is as thick as you can meaningfully make it to make
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense to me. And I do think, yeah, that there is an important distinction. And that's why I think that there's so much room, right? Like there's some people are just going to want something great. And, some devs are going to want the bare metal to build their own great thing. But I do think that a lot of people right now are a bit overwhelmed and worried, and there's fear out there. And so anything that we can do to help them understand it, and that it is really something to help, like it does amplify you, it is leverage, it is not something that works on its own. And maybe some people would say not yet. I think that it'll kind of be a while, and I think that people care about what people care about. So if we help them do the things that they care about, that's great.
Do you have one for like, what do you think about the other hard to test things like creative writing? Like you talked about
Mm,
Sam Peach's stuff.
mm,
Obviously, very close to home for every,
mm,
close to
mm,
home to me as well. There is a creative writing model. I
mhm.
haven't had access, but you've heard rumors.
Yeah.
Yeah, just like what is the future of creative writing? And like how would you measure it?
Yeah. I mean, we definitely use it a lot at Every, but it's not like, put something
Wait,
in,
wait,
get something out.
you have the GPT creative writing model?
I'm going to say
You're
that
not
we use AI a lot at Every, you know what I mean?
okay. All right. All right.
And we just like, and what I mean is, it's not like put something in, get something out. It's like we have great editors, and our editors have been doing it for a long time. And like, as somebody who I made a lot of video content, but I didn't do a ton of writing before coming to Every. I learned a lot from my editors, and there were some things that they would tell me every single time, right? Like, and like focus on these. Dan really drives in thinking about audience and story, and how you can improve that. And so how can we take that? Katie, one of my colleagues, is doing great work here. She's putting together these things, like these like kind of packages of, here's some things that you can think about, here's some things that we can give to the LLM that are tailored to you. And everybody has their own process. For me, I think a lot when I talk, so I'll use a lot of dictation, and I'll have prompts set up that have sections for dictation, sections for things I've written in the past that I really love, sections for things that we think about as Every, like our style guide, my editor notes, maybe a transcript of a call between myself and my editor, and then use that to then end with like, ask me questions that once answered will help me take a first pass at this, right? Like to help create a scaffold. And so then you do that, and then you go back and forth, you constantly edit. That's something I really emphasize in consulting. If you're not editing, if you're not reflecting on a message coming out and editing above, then like that's something you need to do, because you don't want to pollute the context with anything that's not exactly what you're trying to say. And so, I'll edit messages like 20 times and dictate and add in there more context, because it's not one to one. There's translation happening, right? There's encoding, there's decoding. It looks like English, but it's working in token space. And so being able to reflect on that and understand and build your intuition is big. And then you just kind of iterate. And a lot of the time I take out ideas, and then I'm rewriting big chunks of them. And then my editors go through it actually after having our AI editor take a pass. And so it changes a whole lot afterwards, but it helps consolidate ideas. And at least for me, that's something that works, but everybody does it differently. That's not even standard across our team.
Yeah. That would be interesting. Would I have dreams of hosting a writing retreat that it's like how to use AI to leverage your writing but still write like a human. So it's called
Yeah.
Write Like a Human.
I
But
love it.
like yeah.
That's
I
great.
held one like 3 years ago, but and people really liked it. I just need to sit down and do things. Yeah, I'm kind of out of the event organizing business for a while.
I was gonna say, you've been not busy at all recently. You want to run it on an event, huh?
No, it's just like I think that I would like to learn for others. I'm not super AI pilled in my own writing, and I know I could be. And generally, like one of the failed tracks of the conference. Now I get to like spill the tea on like what didn't happen. We had this thing called AI in action, and it was supposed to be you as an excited user of another person's product,
Mm,
talking about how it improves your life
mm.
and talking about how to be more productive with it. But it turned out to be everyone applying for that was just shilling their own products. So we killed it. But
Yeah, there was a little of that happening, but I think that some of the best talks weren't that, right? Like some of the best talks.
yeah.
Man, I'm gonna forget her name. Isa from Notebook LM.
Yeah. Hux. Yeah.
Yeah, her talk was great. Her talk was
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
Talks really about clarity and how you need to have clarity and understanding yourself. And then that's going to give you energy to build an awesome product for somebody. And, I so resonate with that. Like, I think that one of the hardest things, but most important things you can do in life is like have a goal in and of itself, if you accomplish it, makes you happy, right? Like one of the hardest things to do. But if you don't do that, then you don't know what's the right decision because everything is downstream of the goal. I thought Sarah Guo's talk was great. You know, she handled it like a champ.
Did well. So sorry for her.
No, I mean,
We basically didn't rehearse that transition properly.
but I mean, there were so many people talking, and I think that that's one of the trade-offs you guys made, where it was just like so much awesome information was coming at once. You were able to have so many people there, so many great speakers, and so not everyone can do a rehearsal every single time, but I think that that's totally fine. And honestly, I think it made it a little bit more memorable, and I think that she came out really good, and I remember a lot of that talk as a result.
Yeah,
And I thought
yeah.
that constraints are good sometimes.
For sure, for sure. She had, yeah, there was, if it was going to happen to anyone, it should have happened to her because she was able to handle it. Yeah, cool. Well, thanks for jumping on. This is a very short notice, but, I think it's just, I like to be timely when the thing is still hot and when you still want feedback and the feedback actually matters to you, that we record this, get it out there. People who are like, oh, I want to contribute, like this is like a good time for it.
Please.
Then they can at least get in touch.
Yeah, 3 things I want to do now. We want to make a data viewer so you can actually go
Yeah.
not have to load a massive 58
And
gig.
all the JSON is here, right? Just go
Yep.
nuts. Right?
Yeah. And then we want to improve the front end, and I want to make it playable. I'd love to have a human versus AI diplomacy tournament, and I think that we'd learn a lot from that because I think that it's kind of a mix between diplomacy and I wonder if we get some prompt engineers to jailbreak it and win in like 5 turns. I would be fascinated to see if that happens or not.
I think you get Noam Brown who won human diplomacy, and then you also get like one of the jailbreakers like Riley Goodside or Elder Plinus, who I think is in New York, by the way. Yeah, maybe I'm not.
No,
supposed
I mean,
to say that,
I think
but
it'd be so cool because I think that we'd learn a ton from the prompts, and like that's one of the things that this is why I'm so excited about the project. Like
okay, got it.
Everybody learns, but yeah,
we would. How long does a game take to play out?
It really varies. Some last 20 years versus like some last 70 years in the game. And so like,
human time.
No, human time watching it, I think it's like anywhere from 4 to 18 hours, something to play out.
Oh my God.
I think we'd have to use voice as your input. That's your only way that you're going to get enough context out. And then you do it. And then it's either who can win in the shortest amount of time or at the most, like who can get the most territories, so supply centers in the allotted time. You know what I mean? So you can cut it off.
Oh, there's a cutoff. Okay. That's good.
There can be. Yeah.
Okay. I might want to like host like a thing. Here I go again. But like, we don't know. No's our next guest on the podcast.
Yeah.
He'd be so down.
No, I'd love to do that.
4 humans, 3 robots or some mix of that like that. You can make that happen.
Yeah, that'd be cool. And and lead into like, I'd love to have like a tournament too. You kind of like incentivize people to like compete. Like some kind of like I don't know.
It's hard to compete. Like, I mean, how do you have? There's only 7 players.
Right. Well, I think what you do is you have a single human play against the same AIs,
all the bots,
and who can win
the highest
in the shortest amount of time, or like cap it to 12 hours. Who can get the most amount of supply centers in 12 hours? And you're the champ, right? Because like you've won. And maybe you get some sponsors. You let whoever wins. You probably have to because the tokens are expensive unless we get like a ton of sponsors or something. But like then you split the pot with whoever wins or something.
Yeah.
But I think it would be fun.
Okay. All right. Well, if you're interested in any of that stuff, get in touch with Alex mostly. I would help on the community side if we can sort of get some in-person event together. Otherwise, it could just take place online. It doesn't have to be a thing.
I think both would be good.
Yeah. Well, great to have you. Thanks for putting together all this stuff. I'm looking forward to the next year of work, and then hopefully every AIE we just like come together and like talk about what the latest thing is.
And back at you. Thank you so much for putting on the conference. I thought it was beautiful. Got to meet some really cool people.
Yeah. Thank you.